CBS News coverage of Campaign 84 election night continues. This portion is sponsored by Manufacturers Hanover, the financial source worldwide. By Sun Company, where there's sun, there's energy. And by MasterCard, MasterCard International, so worldly, so welcome. And now from CBS News election headquarters in New York, here again is Dan Rather.
CBS News estimates that Ronald Reagan has been re-elected president. The question remains, how big a mandate is he likely to get? Welcome back to our election coverage. The polls have just closed in 16 states, with a total of 195 electoral votes in these states alone. On the basis of the results in those states and on interviews with voters as they left the polling places, CBS News now estimates that Ronald Reagan has been re-elected president of our United States. Until this hour, it takes 270 electoral votes to win. Ronald Reagan already has, as you saw on that, we estimate about 280. Now, up until this hour, President Reagan had all the states in red that you see here, 136 electoral votes. This is before we started counting these new votes in from the Midwest and from the South. This is how it looked before the polls closed in many states at this hour. Now, after the polls closed in the states at 8 o'clock, the electoral count began to grow. And of the states reporting this hour, of the 16 more states, Ronald Reagan has won 12 of these new states, putting his electoral vote total over the top with 280. Walter Mondale at this hour won one, the District of Columbia. Mondale has yet to win a state, but as expected, we estimate that he has carried the District of Columbia, which gives Mondale 3 electoral votes. This is the way the map looks now. Virtually all red. Ronald Reagan, 280 electoral votes, at least we estimate he has now. Walter Mondale gets 3 in the District of Columbia. It's still alive and working. The District of Columbia blinking up there in the right-hand corner of your screen. Since the district is so small, we have to put it on a little blink there so you can see it. In terms of the national vote, actual votes in and tabulated, 3% of the precincts reporting Reagan leads Mondale 62% to 38%. The Reagan tally is 1,730,000 votes. Mondale with just over 1 million votes. But remember, there are 538 electoral votes, and in the Electoral College is where it counts. Reagan is over the top with 280 of those electoral votes, we estimate. Now, Bruce Morton, not a surprising result, but how did the president fashion this victory?
Well, not surprising, Dan, maybe a little bigger than people thought. Of course, you could make the argument all he really needed to do was win Delaware. Delaware is never wrong. It's always with the winner. And Ed Rollins, the manager of the Reagan-Bush campaign, said at one point, listen, we just go and spread a couple of $1 million around Delaware. There's no way we can lose this thing. Seriously, I'd kind of like to turn that around a little and talk about what Walter Mondale tried to do. Mr. Reagan ran on peace and prosperity, and that's usually a winner. This is clearly a landslide. We don't yet quite know its geographic limits, but it'll be astonishing if the West turns around. That's been bedrock Republican territory for some elections past now. But we might take a look, based on our CBS News New York Times exit poll, at some of the groups Walter Mondale thought he might be able to get to come his way. First, young people. In fact, today, according to our poll, young people voted for the Reagan-Bush ticket. The Democrats had hoped that, as youth has in the past, it would vote Democratic this time. They hope that a lot of the younger, the upwardly mobile professionals, yumpies in that word we all heard so often this year, would object to the Jerry Falwell kind of conservatism, rules about abortion and school prayer and all that. In fact, about a quarter of Gary Hart's voters in the Democratic primaries voted for Ronald Reagan today. The Democrats have historically had the older voters worried about Medicare and Social Security. Mr. Mondale tried to make those issues, but those people went today for Ronald Reagan. Farmers, another group that once upon a time in Franklin Roosevelt's day used to vote pretty solidly Democratic, they today were for the Reagan-Bush ticket. Women, sick transit gloria gender gap, I suppose, women voted Republican today. And Italian Americans, it was thought that if Geraldine Ferraro were a help anywhere, she would be a help with Catholics and Italian Americans. That didn't work either. As far as issues are concerned, Mr. Mondale spent a lot of his time talking about the deficit and the need to raise taxes to bring it down. Voters today said they didn't want to raise taxes to bring it down. They were on Mr. Reagan's side of that argument, and they also gave him credit as a strong leader. So you could argue, Dan, that the Mondale campaign tried to do 2 or 3 particular things. They thought they'd get credit for boldness by coming out in favor of raising taxes. That backfired. They thought that picking a woman for vice president, a truly bold stroke, might help them. It apparently didn't. They pinned a lot of faith on the debates. And people in our poll today just said the debates didn't make very much difference with them one way or the other. So the Mondale campaign took some gambles and lost.
Lost all of them except in the District of Columbia from the states reporting thus far, which reminds me, Bruce, and I know that you and I were just talking about this, that there's still a great deal at stake in those states where the polls are still open. When we encourage people to go out there and vote, it is a case that there's still a lot at stake. First of all, there is the question of how big a victory this is going to be. Ronald Reagan, his hopes for a an unprecedented 50-state sweep, those hopes still alive and working. That's one big question, how big the win? The other big question, how long, how powerful will the Reagan coattails be? He's got an avalanche going. Now, is he going to be able to pull in the wake of that avalanche some additional Republican senators in? The Republicans have control of the Senate. Is he going to be able to pull in an ideological majority in the House of Representatives?